Daniel, and today we will learn 3 classic nice sounding cell patterns built from the diminished scale. So a quick introduction. The diminished scale is an octatonic symmetrical scale, so it contains 8 notes instead of the usual 7, and it alternates between half steps and whole steps. So half, whole, half, whole, half, whole, and so on into infinity. You usually say that there are 2 different kinds of scales, but the only difference is really where you start on the scale. So we have the whole half diminished scale, which you can use over diminished chords. Not always though, you have to use your ears to guide you. But today we're going to focus on the other scale, the half-whole scale, and build some patterns to use over dominant chords, and especially dominant chords that are leading to a major chord. So let's say we have an E flat dominant 7 chord. Now we add all the spicy notes in between, the flat 9, the sharp 9, the sharp 11, and the 13. And now we suddenly have the half-whole diminished scale. So if we move it upwards, start on an E instead. And then just one more. The next scale, the F sharp diminished scale, is actually the same notes as in the E flat diminished scale. So that's the beauty of diminished scale. If you learn 3 of them in your whole register, you have actually nailed all 12. So let's start building the first pattern from the diminished scale. You can start on either the root, the sharp 9, the sharp 11, or the 13. But to make it easy, maybe just think the root. So if you have an E flat dominant chord, we start on the E flat. So the pattern is 1 whole step down, a 4th up, whole step down, 4th up. So it sounds like this. And I like to practice these kind of patterns in smaller cells. So around an octave is enough, I think. We start on E. F. And now again, when we have played 3 of the patterns and are a minor 3rd up, you will just build on what you already know, because the F sharp pattern will be the same as the E flat one. So you have already played, right? So you just need to add 2 extra notes. So when you have played through these cells in your whole register a couple of times, maybe you want to expand the cell to your whole register. I mean like this. That way it turns into a flexibility exercise as well. So let's move on to pattern number 2. Just as the first pattern, we start with a whole step down, but then we continue down a major 3rd, and then a whole step down again, and then up a 4th. Down a whole step, down a major 3rd, down a whole step, up a 4th. It sounds like this. Okay, from E. F. And then, after a while, you can start to combine these 2 patterns. Or you can actually loop these over and over. Sounds a bit crazy though. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can do the same thing in your whole register. So, how do you start using these patterns? I like to think of it kind of the way you learn a new language. You practice a word over and over, or a short phrase. You put what you have learned into longer sentences, and eventually it will start to feel more organic. So, knowing that these two patterns start either on the root, the sharp 9, the sharp 11, or the 13, you can start to kind of write your own phrases. Let's say we will end up on an F major chord. So we have G minor 7 to a C7, and we start the phrase on the root. Or we start the same way, but the actual pattern begins on the sharp 9. Let's do one where we start on the flat 11. Or you can try to sprinkle it in one of those ending cadences. You know, when the song stops on the dominant chord, and let you as a soloist play a little solo rubato. It almost works as is, right? I can imagine Dexter Gordon doing something like this. Okay, the third pattern is more of a line or lick almost. I know J.J. Johnson used to play it. Sonny Stitt. You can actually hear a lot of all of these three patterns in his playing. To me it has this 50s bebop sound. So the same thing with this pattern. You start either on the root, the sharp 9, the sharp 11, or the 13. Or you can think of it as starting on the leading note into the minor chord. So if we stay in the key of F major, we have the G minor chord, which means we will start on an F sharp. So we just go up the diminished scale, 5 notes. Then when we go back, we skip one note, go up one note, and skip one note downwards again. And so far, if we think G minor, it doesn't have that diminished sound yet, but if we continue the pattern upwards now, the C dominant chord will have that flavor. So let me play the same phrase 4 different times now. I'll display here which chord is sounding in the background, so you can see that it actually fits in all these different environments. Pretty cool, right? You can also use it in a blues. If we take our favorite B-flat blues, in the 5th bar we have an E-flat dominant chord, right? And sometimes in the 6th bar you play an E diminished chord. So over the E-flat dominant chord we play an E-flat half whole diminished scale, and on the E diminished chord we play an E whole half diminished scale. And those two scales are the same scale. So if we start the pattern or the phrase on the sharp 11 of the dominant chord, so an A in this case, it sounds pretty cool. And I'm sure you can come up with other places it might fit. So I know the diminished scale can be a bit abstract and overwhelming, but the best way is to use your ears and your muscles and your brain to move around these kind of patterns to really get a grip of them and internalize them. But if you want a bit of more visual help, I have a PDF available for purchase with these 3 patterns in a register in about 2 octaves, which you can reference if you get stuck. Link to that is in the description. So what's your experience with diminished scales? Let me know in the comment section. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.